We wanted to just close this big update on all of our project work and really open it up for questions and kind of an informal panel discussion with all of our project partners, either in amongst each other, or if there's questions from the group or any of our other projects that aren't sitting up here. Cheshire's B1, Newport Health Center's B1, APD, some of our other community-based projects. So please feel free to ask any questions, and we can get started. Don't all rush to it.
So at West Central Behavioral Health, we're involved in multiple B1 projects because we cover the southern Grafton County area and all of Sullivan County. And so, thinking about what's the bandwidth of all of this? It impacts on staff hours, it impacts on partnerships, it impacts on a lot of things. And so when you stop and think about it, we're always sort of thinking, we think it's a great thing to do, but you have to resource it right. And Cynthia Twombly, who's sitting over there in the back corner over there, has really been the lead on it for our agency. And so each B1 project that comes up, so our first one was with Heater Road, and that's really moving along, and that was one of the examples that I gave because it really has worked well. It's an outstanding program. And then before you know it, another one creeps up, and that's sitting down in Sullivan County. With Valley Regional, who's a strong partner of ours, and so whether we think it's worth it or not, we have to make it work because it's important. And so we find the bandwidth to do that. And then another one creeps up in primary care up at Dartmouth Hospital. Okay, now we're on 3, and we're holding off you're smiling, right? And we're holding off on the 4th one right now and working towards that, which is the Newport Health Center, where we have a child program in Newport, which is a thriving program for the kids in Newport. And so that we're looking at doing that B1 project down the road, and I hope you don't have any other surprises. But anyway,
we have a really strong business model.
That's
in this for a while.
So we have 4 B1 projects operating, and I have to tell you, it takes a lot of coordinating, a lot of resource management. And if we didn't believe in it at the leadership level, it could easily fall apart. And so we've been trying to talk to the staff about the value of it and also share the same kinds of stories we've shared with you today about the successes of the program and why they should do it. It's not just one more job. And I think that's a really important message. Like, we don't walk around going, oh my God, I don't know how we're going to do this. Because you're not going to get people to participate. And so, so understanding the value of it all is really important. So we hope to get the last one stood up relatively soon, but you do have to think about the impact of the agency and how to make it happen and involve the right people. So anyway, I'll just throw that out, but it's well worth it. But leadership is really important in the attitude that leadership brings to these projects.
And that's something that I was just talking to Tyler about. These kind of forums also are helpful. Within our large organization, we have these great programs going on. I'm with Dartmouth at Heater Road. We have these great programs going on, but the whole stigma issue, the whole culture, it goes beyond our projects. I'm talking to Tyler about, we have to train this whole other group of people and other workforce in our organization that doesn't necessarily directly do this work, but we sort of have a silo going on. So we have to do a little bit of this. So we have a lot of education and culture change, even to continue to keep pushing this forward and breaking down those silos within our own organization. So not only meeting our patient needs, but we can really do more by changing that culture across the board.
Just in time. Any other questions?
So I have a question for the Hitchcock West Central group. With your multidisciplinary care team, have you had other agencies at the tables for specific cases?
It pretty much has been West Central and Dartmouth Heater Road Primary Care, but we recently had a patient that we're considering bringing on, and their key player is Headrest. Right. So we are now talking with Headrest to get all the formalities done so that we can have them part of that shared care plan meeting. Yep.
And I know that Michelle Lynn, who's the care team coordinator for the B1 team, was unfortunately unable to be here today, but she and I also had a conversation earlier this week about how Pathways of the River Valley has also engaged with the team and is talking about their population and some overlap there, and they'll likely be a next step for involvement on that MDCFT meeting. Sorry, I'm using a lot of acronyms.
As APD, as Alice McDay is bringing this into our primary care practice, do you have any tips on that stigma reduction for staff and the training opportunities that could possibly be available to, get everybody on board and have this conversation, understand the importance of these conversations?
Yeah, we have a great project manager who has helped the leadership team, because we've done this in a number of different settings in our organization, and really thinking of every level of staff. Your check-in, what does it mean for your MA? What does it mean for your nursing staff? And we've really created some good tools step by step in terms of that education and how it's going to impact them, and it's made a huge difference when we flip the switch.
Yeah, when you mentioned stigma, one of the things that I think is core to what we're doing in our work with folks is, it seems like it's a constant struggle to recognize and then impact stigma. And I'll contrast two quick stories about this. So we had a gentleman that came to us, and when he came to us, he was leaving assisted care against medical advice. He was going to go back into his own apartment. And when he came to us, we had already known that people had tried to get him a guardian. People had tried to do an involuntary hospitalizations to prevent him from doing this because they were so concerned. So he left, and he went home, and within a week he fell and broke his wrist, and he was back up at the hospital, and there was another one of these BEAS report and these things. And not that they aren't important sometimes, but his goal was to live at home. So from a person-centered care perspective, okay, if this is the decision you've made, what can we do to make this work, and what would tell you that this isn't working? So that was the perspective that we took. And we urged care providers to not panic at every opportunity in terms of him falling or whatever. And he's doing great now. He had a couple bumps in the road, but he's home, and with getting handrails in and things like that, he's now living. I contrast that to my 89-year-old father-in-law, who since passed away. And at 88, he had congestive heart failure. The doctors and everyone else was saying that you can't go back home. You're going to have to go live in assisted living. And he said, well, that's just not happening. So one day he took a cab and he went back up to the lake house, and that's where he lived for 6 months, and then he died there. And I contrast that because there wasn't this service system of people that were making assumptions about his own competency and capability of making some sort of life decision. So I think things like, in terms of training, I think a person-centered care model, I think, is a very helpful way to be really respectful and mindful of whose life is this, so that we're really careful about overusing coercive measures, well-meaning sometimes, but I think that we don't listen enough to the client.
The recovery coach I work with at our Moms in Recovery program, Sherry Breyer and myself, co-facilitate destigmatizing practice in a medical setting. We have a PowerPoint we put together. We've done a few different presentations to NEPQuIN and PDOB-GYN settings. I'm happy to share our PowerPoint. There's a really great document called Words Matter, and it's just about language and different things that you can say instead. And just we've put that around to different workstations, nursing stations. We've shared it all around the hospital, and I think people are starting to pick up a little bit on different language to use, but I'm happy to give it all to you.
I just want to comment on a different form of the stigmatism that you're talking about, and that is within the team and the staff when you try to initiate this. This IDN project is not something that's going to be successful in a top-down mandate. It really has to, the top has to support it, has to cheerlead it, but it really, in order, and what I've watched as a coordinator of this team, I am not clinical. I am the pusher to keep them all moving, but it is the team that has to completely embrace this. And when Valley launched their project, we made it absolutely, I don't want to say a requirement, but we put the expectation that everyone in that team of that primary care, from the front desk person to all the way to the provider themselves, are on that team. And so every decision, every conversation has been that whole team. And it is resource intensive. We have a team, I want to say off the top of my head, there's 12 people, not including the IDN folks that come. We meet the first Tuesday of the month, just the Valley team, to work through the issues within the system. The third Tuesday, we meet with the partners, the mental health providers, all together. So every month we have that global perspective and then the minute management perspective. But that group, they own this. So when the CCA was created, the front desk person in these meetings, we said, what's the impact? What are you seeing? Are you hitting a bump? How can we work this better? And so every one of those members of the team has an opportunity to share what's going on in real time with how this needs to progress and how it needs to get better. And that, I think, has made a difference. The stigma of, whenever you get a project, it's like, oh, gosh, here we go again. We got another project. We got to do on top of the job that we already have. We have to do this. And every step of the way, as we've gone through this, there's been a direct correlation as to the why. Why are we doing it? And the story that I shared earlier about the 20-year-old, that only happened 2 weeks ago. And it actually just came out Tuesday in our meeting. And I watched the staff tell this story, and there were those of us who didn't even know it had happened getting goosebumps, and like we were in shock that this is amazing. And the staff, what I saw with the staff reaction was almost, it wasn't that it was taken for granted, but it was in the course of business. And that's the point in which you got to kind of call time out and go, wait a minute, did the pathway work? Did the process that you put in place work? Are there things that needed to be changed? And the answer was no, it all worked well. That's the point that you have to celebrate. And Stephanie was mentioning it to me this morning. We got to make a big deal out of this of the next meeting, because everything that team created worked. It did what it was supposed to.